sycophants, disdainful of the rules set for everyone else, who hasn't changed a bit.
That is 100% true. I never understood. It didn't take long to figure out how they worked and how they acted. And, you know, at the time, I was a member of the Secret Service Uniform Division, and I just, you know, watched what went on, and I observed the way people acted around her. And her co-workers, these people that we referred to back then as the Arkansas Mafia, friends from Arkansas, they were afraid of her. They were terrified. And at first, I'm like, I don't understand that. And by this time, I'd been close to her proximity-wise when I saw her lash out at somebody. And to me, it was almost comical. I was like, God, I've never seen anybody so upset over something so simple. And her anger and rage isn't fixing anything. It never does.
I don't think anger or rage works for anybody.
No.
You said, though, portrayed as the long-suffering spouse of an unfaithful husband whose infidelities I personally observed and knew to be true, the Hillary Clinton I saw was anything but a sympathetic victim. Now, those loyal to her kept coming back for these volcanic eruptions of hers. I witnessed firsthand the Clintons' personal and professional dysfunction. So consumed were they by scandal, so intent on destroying their real or imagined enemies, governing was an afterthought. Why don't you go into describing this temper that you're describing?
So, there's many examples of that. The one that always comes to mind is I refer to it as the blue glove incident, right? And so what happened is that a group of people were coming in to visit with the president and his senior staff.
And you said he was very charming to people. He would always want to give them extra time. He was always accommodating to anybody that came by.
Yes, 100%. He could. He was incredibly charming. I actually had the opportunity to introduce some family members to him one time. And my father, for 5 minutes, couldn't open his mouth. I mean, it was just incredible. And so anyway, Mrs. Clinton's anger at this time, these visitors were coming in, and through a series of errors with the uniform division, as these guests were coming in, there was about 30 to 40, I think, guests. And they were representative members of the Gay and Lesbian Coalition that helped get President Clinton elected the first time. And so under the promise that he would immediately allow gays in the military. And things were different back then, as you well remember, I'm sure. You know.
And then it became a compromise of don't ask, don't tell.
Right, and they were furious about that. Right. So the person bringing them in was former Congressman BYRNE Frank. So I'm actually posted at the Oval Office, and I get a phone call from a friend of mine, and he described to me, he said, heads up, we just had an incident. And what he described to me was, as the guests were coming in, the officers that were running the metal detectors, they were putting on these blue gloves that we're required to wear. When BYRNE Frank saw them putting the gloves on, he said, why are you putting those gloves on, officer? And the one guy, I refer to him in the book as Krusty. He's this great old Marine from the Vietnam era. He put the gloves on, he looked the congressman right in the eye and goes, why do you think? Well, what BYRNE Frank didn't know was the list that we had of who was coming in, it actually said on the top, HIV positive representative. Now that we all do that you can't get HIV that way, but we still have to wear the gloves because we're protecting ourselves from other stuff.
Right.
So
and that was standard operating procedure.
It was, absolutely. So when they got in, they took advantage of what happened there, and they berated the staff, and it got up to Mrs. Clinton, and she went off the deep end. And I describe it in the book as, on a scale of 1 to 10, this was about a 1, considering what goes on around the world and what the presidency is responsible for. So I get a heads-up phone call from an officer on the east side of the White House. It said, heads up, here comes Mrs. Clinton, and she's bad. So she came over, she went into the Oval Office, and she berated the president for about 40 minutes. It's so loud that the agent and I that were posted outside the Oval Office actually closed a doorway that blocked off the Roosevelt Room and some outer hallways because she was so loud. And she berated the president. She blamed everything on us. She called us a bunch of...
Yeah. Don't worry, you can't say it out on radio. I know what you're going to say.
She called us a bunch of rear ends and used a lot of foul language. And it got so bad that at one point, the agent looked at me and realized, he said, the president is actually defending you guys. And it was kind of a comical moment. I'm like, oh my God, the president's defending us.
But she wanted to get rid of you because she said, oh, they're loyal to George Herbert Walker Bush. They were here with him, and they're disloyal to us. They have been from day one.
Sure. They did have a weird paranoia about the Bush administration. They actually replaced the phone system because they thought they had a tap. Almost a brand new phone system.
Wow.
When they first got there. And it was expensive, and they didn't have a way to pay for it at first.
Yeah, well, you talk at length as to how they became, you know, spending a lot of money was a big issue, and you had to draw straws to give her the bad news. Tell us about, you start chapter 1, the vase.
Yeah. So I come into work one morning. I'm assigned to the Oval Office. That's my permanent post at the time. And I come in early, I get my workout in, and as I'm heading over, I run into a couple of the people that work in the mansion. And they said, oh, wait till you get in there and hear what happened. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I went over to the mansion and talked to my buddy who worked on the mansion floor. And I said, hey, what's going on? I just saw George and you know, so-and-so that they said something happened. They said, oh, that the president and the first lady had this huge fight last night. And it was so loud that the people that work in the mansion that take care of the first family, like they backed away downstairs and it was loud. And then there was a loud noise, like a crashing sound. And when it went up to be investigated, there was a broken vase on the floor. And, you know, nothing at the
It was across the hall from where it was normally placed.
Right.
It wasn't like, it didn't fall over.
No.
It was thrown.
Right. That appears to be.
And the next morning he had a black eye.
Yeah. The next time I saw him, he had a black eye. Now, I don't, you know, I wasn't there, Sean. I don't know if he hit her, if she hit him. I don't know if she threw the vase at him. I don't know how he got the black eye, but I'm going to tell you this, the gardener didn't give it to him. Nobody in the Secret Service hit him. And so when he came down that next morning, you know, you could see they were trying to hide a black mark with makeup and stuff.
Right. It didn't work. And you even asked, oh, and they said it's allergies. And
right.
The answer was allergies in one eye, not two.
Right. And then, yeah.